My friend Sarah Waxman. My dear friend Sarah Waxman is going to facilitate. She's the chief mama operator of At the Well, which is a women's organization, a wellness organization specifically for Jewish women, specializing in connecting women to their spirituality, their body, and their wellness. Will you lead this panel?
Hey everybody, it's so awesome to be part of this family. This is like a monumentous moment, and it feels good to be here and to have you guys all here. I know that this is like a really challenging and deep and important conversation, and so we wanted to just bring in our hearts to this conversation and hear what's going on, and know that it's up to us to wake up and to ask and to figure out what's going on best for our bodies. And with me we have these amazing people who are going to help us sort of navigate this journey as a way to open up the conversation, certainly not the end of it. So all the way at the end we have Dr. Jessica Vernon, an OBGYN faculty at Lincoln Medical Center in the Bronx, New York, interested in providing healthcare to women from diverse cultural backgrounds in one of New York's most underserved neighborhoods, empowering women to make their own healthcare decisions, including education and access to all family options. Next to her, we have Dr. Alfred Shihata, world-class researcher in women's health, specializing in contraception and preventative sexual transmitted disease, the inventor of the FemCap and FemmyCycle. They have a booth downstairs. And Dr. Shihata focuses on advocating for the prevention of STDs and HIV. Next to him, we have Holly Grigg-Spall. Did I say your name right? The author of Sweetening the Pill, which everybody must read. It's inspired my own work. It's really important. And Holly's book is the inspiration for the forthcoming documentary with Ricky Lake and Abby Epstein we just saw about. She currently works with two women's health-centric companies, Flow Living and Daisy. And last up, Emily Moonbeam Varnam. Emily is the co-founder, along with Kelsey Knight, of the Fifth Vital Sign. They also have a booth downstairs, a grassroots project using education as preventative care through body literacy, informed choice. She's an experienced birth worker, advocate, and intersectional feminist. So welcome everybody. So happy to have you guys help us kick this off. We got a really pumped crowd, I can feel it. All right, first question going to Dr. Vernon and then over to Holly. We want to just start this out with just, again, brief snapshot on the history of birth control. Like, how did we get here and where are we now? And talk really into the microphone, like way more than you think.
Can you hear? Okay. So birth control has really been around for thousands of years. It goes back to traders putting stones in the uteruses of their camels to get them across long voyages without getting pregnant. As far as our idea of using it in women, that went back to ancient Greece, when we started thinking of using different precious metals and putting them in the uteruses of women as well. Modern birth control, as we know it, really started in the 1800s, when we started looking more again with using intrauterine devices and devices that kind of block the cervix, again with metals and wrapping them around silk strings. And then closer to the 1900s, we started thinking about the more modern idea of birth control, and with Margaret Sanger around the early 1900s and Planned Parenthood, that idea evolved into making birth control available for women. And the first approved of birth control was actually a diaphragm. We went from there into finding hormonal contraceptions, with the first pill being approved around 1960. And again, making these available to every woman was also another ordeal with the feminist movement, as all of you, I'm sure, pretty well know. And then after that, we evolved into the modern idea of other IUDs, further forms of hormonal contraceptions. We had a couple setbacks, and we had things like the Delcon Shield, which started causing bad pelvic inflammatory disease because of the type of string they were using on the device. That type of string is no longer used in modern IUDs, so you don't have to worry about that. But that kind of set us back in that field for a while. The pills have become more evolved, using less and less hormones and becoming more diverse in the types of progesterones in the pills. And we also now have the shot, the patch, the Nexplanon, which is the implant that goes in the arm, and the NuvaRing, the vaginal ring.
Holly, anything to add to that?
Yes. So my book actually mostly concentrates on the history of the pill after it was released. And one of the things that I talk about, which I found really interesting, and we found really interesting for the documentary too, is the Nelson Pill hearings, which happened in 1970, which was actually the beginning of the women's health movement as we know it today, which is when feminists got together and said, hang on, we're using this pill, the first pill, NAV, and it's got a lot of side effects. Women are dying, women are having horrible depression, horrible migraines. What are we going to do about it? And so they managed to protest to the point that they got these Nelson Pill hearings, but the women weren't allowed to speak. And so they went and they actually had to voice their concerns, like stand up and actually do a protest within the hearings. So I find that like really interesting because a lot of us don't hear about that, and that was the beginning of the women's health movement, which was, one of the founders was someone called Barbara Seaman, and she wrote a book called The Doctor's Case Against the Pill. So that's kind of, it's funny when we talk about like feminism and the pill, we forget that like criticism and concern about the pill is also a really big part of feminist history too.
Thank you. Yeah. I actually want to bounce it back to Dr. Vernon for a second. Can you tell us a little bit about how race plays into this history and sort of understanding where we are now?
Sure. I think as race with any issue, it's a difficult subject, and me as not growing up as a minority woman, I haven't had to face all of those issues, so I can't speak fully to that. But race, along with socioeconomic status and the other opportunities offered, have really played into what is available for these women and kind of how they've been treated by the medical community. I don't know if you guys realize, up until like the early 2000s, we were having problems with forced sterilization in minority communities, in prisons, in hospitals. In the 1970s, it was a big issue with minority women out in Los Angeles, but even, with minority women in prisons up until the early 2000s. And so we have a lot of backlash from that, a lot of people not trusting us. It's also why, if you notice, when women want to get permanent sterilization today, they have to sign a consent 30 days in advance because they were being forced right before delivery to sign these consents against their will. So we still have a lot of room to improve, and we also are looking at, what kind of methods we're offering to minority women versus other women, and how we're kind of pressuring them one way or another based on their background, based on how many kids they have, based on their education level, and trying to do our best to equilibrate that and bring things more equal for everyone now.
Thank you for your work and for including women who can't be in this room with us today. We're gonna come to you, promise you. I'm gonna follow the sheet so we get end on time. Emily, this question's for you. How do I know what birth control I should be taking, and what types of questions should I be asking?
Yeah, great question that I had no idea about before this moment. Just kidding. So for me, there's the necessity to look at both the micro and the macro in every situation, and I think in this situation, the micro is on the individual level. How do we approach the healthcare system or a healthcare provider and know all of our options, know the mechanism of action, know the risks and benefits, and a lot of that is about feeling confident enough to ask those questions, but it's also about having the understanding of what our bodies are already doing and how they work, and knowing your own normal. So a lot of that is about body literacy, and it's about having that foundational level of education. And I don't just mean like, here's the information, read it. I mean like real education that you can find yourself in, that everyone can find themselves in, because I think that even to approach something like this, we need to know how our bodies work, and we need to know, we need to be looking at education that is equitable. So that's like the individual level, like how do we learn about our bodies, and then how do we approach? What does this contain? What are my options? What are the risks and benefits? How does it work in my body? I've been on hormonal birth control and not known what it was doing in my body. So just having somebody who's going to sit down and have that conversation with you. And then I think on the macro level, it's about saying, well, how do we make space for everybody? How do we make curriculum that includes every type of body, every type of experience, that doesn't exclude people? Because when we exclude people, we put them at risk. So that's our individual responsibility to look at creating ways in which we keep people safe by giving them information, looking at ways in which we address our healthcare system and say, do you make space for everybody? How do you make people feel safe enough to even come in the door? You know, I'm thinking this as like an undocumented person. How do I feel safe to come into a room and feel like there is space for me and I'm safe in this space to ask my questions and advocate for myself? And then just knowing what your rights are. You have the right to refuse. You have the right to a second opinion. And you don't need to, even in like a vaginal exam, you don't have to, there's never a case when someone gets to put their hands in your vagina and you don't get to say no. Like that might be the first time that people really understand that, you know? So finding ways on both levels as individuals to push a system to include everybody and give everybody information to get what they need. And then I'm nearly done. On a societal level, challenging things. So like, how do we look at rape culture within our healthcare system? So like coercion in offering birth control. How do we offer birth control to different people that might look different and affect how they have access to things? You know, we can look at like some of the ways that we offer it might be really unfair and really biased. So how do we challenge that on an individual and systemic level? Yeah, really just making space for everybody, making curriculum that includes everybody, and then empowering, and maybe that means standing by individuals and actually going in there with people and saying like, I'm here with you, what do you need? Maybe it's challenging, like, you know what, when you menstruate, it doesn't need to be painful, you know, challenging ideas as well as having advocacy tools.
Thank you. I love this idea of figuring out what's good for me and then going and getting it within community and knowing that you're not alone in this. I want to pass the ball over to you, Dr. Shihata. I want to talk to you about your research around hormonal birth control and depression and what you found out in the research and what your thoughts are about this, what we should be doing. And if there's anything you want to add after Dr. Vernon, please jump in after. But remember, in the microphone.
Okay. I'd like to add that every woman is born with an installed inside contraception. If a woman is too young, she cannot have eggs. She cannot get pregnant. If she's too old, she cannot have eggs. She cannot get pregnant. And she's only provided with one egg per month. Every woman is born with this. So what we call it now, natural family planning or fertility awareness. And I looked into that fertility awareness is the safest method available and the least expensive of all methods of contraception and can be done with a simple thermometer and a paper and a pen. So at the moment, every woman tries to do her fertility awareness by a subjective method. She tried to check her temperature every day, and if she got a cold or a flu, that screw up her temperature chart. And also, she checked her cervical mucus by subjective method. She just, when she feel wet, she tried to check her cervical mucus and check the color, clarity, and stretchability of that cervical mucus. I did a research to pinpoint the time of ovulation. So I used the cervical cap, the FemCap, to collect the cervical mucus 2 days after menstruation, every day. And so the woman get a big amount of cervical mucus in the cup. She can look at the color, clarity, and stretchability of the mucus. This would give a startling difference between the subjective method and the objective examination of the cervical mucus by having a large quantity in the cervical cap to test. So this study I conducted among several women, and 96% could pinpoint the cervical mucus, the fertile cervical mucus that precede ovulation. So this study was very important to add to our knowledge of a fertility awareness method.
Dr. Shihata, I really want to pick your brain around the relationship in your research around depression and hormonal birth control options that are out there. Could you speak a little bit about what you're finding from that specific research?
Yes. We all know about birth control pills or hormonal cause depression for many years. This study, that recent study, reinforced what we already know. That's not new. Women get emotional, depression, and anxiety on the pill, and every birth control method, if you read the package insert, it tells you on anxiety and depression. Usually, pharmaceuticals do not like to put the side effect on their package insert, but this is in every package insert, on anxiety and depression. So this new study is not new to us, it reinforces what you already know.
Thank you. Dr. Vernon, do you want to add something towards this about the research that's coming out around this mental health and the medicine that we're taking and being told to take?
Sure, yeah. I think it's important research that's being done, definitely. The big article that garnered a lot of attention in JAMA last year was one of the largest studies done, and it was prospective. That being said, we have to see, first of all, this is correlation, showing two related facts. We don't know how much of it is causation. We need more research to show that, because other studies in the past have not shown as much of an association or a negative association. Also, their data divided it up, when you look at the tables, more by specific types of birth control and different options, including the injection, the Nexplanon. And so it's good to look more at the specific data per type, I think, when we go forward in the future. And again, looking population specific, because the white women in Denmark are not the women that I treat. They have a very different society there. Their socioeconomic standards, their BMIs, their other risk factors. So I think to really get more population specific data here would be beneficial for us as well.
Thank you. Holly, we want to hear from you. What other side effects of birth control often come up that we aren't told about or necessarily linked to being connected to the pill?
Well, one of the things I was thinking about with that question earlier was that, this event brings together cycles and sex, right? Now, one of the big issues with hormonal birth control is how it affects women's libido, right? And everybody will be like, yeah, I know that, and it's almost become a joke. It's like, oh, well, I'm taking this pill to protect me from pregnancy, but I don't even want to have sex, right? So it's like a big joke, which I think means that we kind of gloss over it a bit, and we don't think about what the details are in there, which is that it affects everything, including things like how much you actually fantasize about sex, like how much you think about sex, the lubrication level that you have, the intensity of your orgasms. Then there's a whole amazing sex-positive movement that we're seeing represented here today. But that hasn't always been connected back to what you're doing for contraception. There's a disconnect there. This kind of event is great because we're making that connection, right? That's something that you take every day to prevent pregnancy. We come from a place where we think, oh, well, the only thing that women care about is that they're not going to get pregnant, and that makes sex better somehow because then it's not worrisome, it's not an anxiety. But actually it goes in, it prevents ovulation, it lowers testosterone levels, and testosterone is important for sex drive in women as well as men. It's not just a male hormone. And so all the mechanism of how it works actually has this kind of expansive impact. And it's not something that we don't talk about perhaps, but it's certainly something I think we kind of just gloss over because it's kind of something that we think is just a given or something we have to put up with. And so I think that's a really interesting topic to look at.
Thank you. Let's bring it back to our educator over here. I want to know, what are some non-hormonal options and what are the benefits and risks? Emily?
Yeah. So for non-hormonal options, we have the non-hormonal copper IUD, we have barrier methods, and we have the cap. And the benefits are that, like Holly is saying, there are some risks associated with taking hormonal birth control. If you think about the endocrine system controlling over 150 functions in your body, when you interrupt something like that, the side effects can be very diverse. And I think what adds to that is that we have a very low expectation and low emphasis on people's qualitative experiences in their bodies. So it might take you a really long time to understand and actually even know what you're allowed to expect as a person with a female reproductive system, in terms of your qualitative experience and what your experiences are like then meeting partners and what you're allowed to even enjoy and expect. So thinking about something that doesn't come with those risk factors is important, and I think sometimes it takes a long time for people to even, like Holly said, to even connect that. And then there are people that just really, for whatever reason, don't find that those methods are possible for them. So it could be even like in terms of like insurance and accessibility to those kinds of options can be really difficult. And then in terms of where you are in a developmental stage, so if you're taking hormonal birth control during some of the most developmentally dynamic years of your life, that is going to perhaps have an impact, and it's really important to take that into consideration. And then, in terms of thinking about barrier methods and hormonal birth control, there is this idea that if you're on birth control, the only thing we're thinking about is preventing pregnancy. And that people that are using birth control and contraceptive, not everybody can even get pregnant. But what is universal is that we can get STDs and STIs, and we need to keep each other safe. You know, we first need to do no harm. And what that looks like is protecting each other with our words, keeping it in our language of like, let's use a barrier method, and creating barrier methods that fit everybody. So we have condoms for both phenotypically female and male reproductive systems or reproductive organs. We have dental dams, and I think I really find it important to give a shout out to barrier methods, because I think that we need to first start there and then work on, okay, so what do I want to do? Do I want to do hormonal or do I want to do non-hormonal? But I think a lot of that is in language. Like when you ask somebody to put a condom on, you're admitting you're going to have sex. Let's look at that. Let's look at consent. Like that's really, let's take it back there, because really as a society, we're still like baby stages. You know, we're still like, let's admit we're going to have sex. And then we say like, and then we're still finding words for how we have sex and the different experiences. Let's just be real about what we like, and then we'll get to keeping each other safe, you know, and then we'll get to actually doing it. And something I really appreciate about this generation is that we're putting language to experiences that have always existed within humans, and we're actually saying it's okay. And when we do that, we make it safe because we bring it into conversation. So I think for non-hormonal birth control options, barrier methods, IUD, and caps, and then thinking about like how we speak about those things and how we are always taking into consideration the fact that we need to be protecting against STDs. We need to be having conversations around that. We need to not think that just because we're preventing pregnancy, we are preventing harm or risk. And a lot of that starts with, again, education. I'm the educator, so I have to push that. I'm like, let's be educated. But really, let's be educated. Let's do that for each other. Let's think about the fact that when you talk about your body, somebody else is learning about theirs for the first time and how you address yours. So that's an individual responsibility that each person in this room has. And if you take one thing from what I'm saying, it's that. Like,
we're with you. So many things resonated. I think that we want everyone in this room to walk away feeling empowered to use your voice in order to find out what's good for you, and know that the person next to you is also trying to figure that out. And so no one should leave here wondering where they can get help from. We have an educator here, we have doctors, we have all these people downstairs. We want to wake everybody else up, the ones that aren't in the room here too. So it sounds like do this in community and make sure that you're using your voice. Dr. Shihata, was there anything else that you wanted to add for non-hormonal options in terms of benefits?
Yes, the non-hormonal, particularly the condom, is the only female and male condom, the only devices are proven to prevent both pregnancy and sexually transmitted diseases. However, not many couples, even at risk, use both the female and male condom. So we have a hierarchy. If they don't want to abstain, this is the best way to prevent sexually transmitted diseases, use the condom. If they don't want to use the condom, use the cervical cap or a diaphragm. This is the hierarchy because there is many studies shows that the cervix is the main portal of entry to bacteria and viruses, not the vagina. The vagina is very resistant to infection. So if you cover the cervix, this is the best you can do short of using the condom. And I hear Holly nodding.
Holly, tell us what you think.
About that.
Yeah, non-hormonal birth control options.
Well, in my book, I talk a lot about the fertility awareness method. And the fertility awareness method is something that I think all people should know about, regardless of whether they want to use it to prevent pregnancy or not, which means, knowing actually how to observe and track your signs of fertility. Because what I always like to say is women are only able to get pregnant 6 days per cycle, whereas men are able to impregnate a woman every single day for most of their lives, and yet we concentrate entirely on how to stop women getting pregnant. So if we start from there, then you can start thinking about fertility awareness, and you start realizing that you don't have to come from a place of fear. You don't have, and for me, being someone who was on the pill for 10 years, it really helped me to have the confidence to come off the pill and not be too scared to do that, because I thought, well, if I'd come off the pill, I'm going to get pregnant right away. There's no way I can avoid it. This is my only option. It's not a dichotomy. So once you learn a little bit, it doesn't have to be a lot, but a little bit about your fertility cycle, it just gives you so much confidence to know that you can totally avoid pregnancy without having to be on a synthetic hormone method. So that's where I come from with it, and I also agree with Emily is that I love condoms. I'm a big condom advocate. Just because you don't like the condom you're using right now doesn't mean you might not find a condom you do like. Just ask people, what condoms do you use? That's really important, I think, because you are much more likely on any given day having sex to get an STD than to get pregnant. That's the truth. So that's really important. And also, I am repping for Daisy today, so if you go down there in the marketplace, and I used Daisy for a year, about a year and a half now, and they basically take the fertility awareness method and made a computer that does everything for you. So you just literally get up in the morning, take your temperature, and it gives you a red light or a green light, depending on whether you're fertile or you're not fertile. And that's sort of, what, as someone who went through manual charting and tracking, that was amazing for me. It really simplified things. It made things as easy as taking a pill or remembering to take a pill every day. So I think that's a great option. That's what I use. But as well, condoms are always a big part of fertility awareness, because if you don't want to have to avoid having sex when you're fertile, then you have to use a barrier method. And I think condoms just get such a bad, it feels like a pun, but it's not a pun, a bad rap these days. As I'm walking into that pun. A bad rap these days, and I think that's really sad, because I just think they're so important. And they're one of only 2 methods that are available to men, right? Condoms and sterilization. So come on, why are we talking about them like they don't matter?
You want to add something?
Yeah, I just wanted to add something about fertility awareness method, which is that I find it really important when I'm introducing people to it to also mention that this is about you and your body. It's a conversation between you and yourself in which you learn things about yourself that you may not have learned before, in which you know what's normal for you, and you can start to use your cycle as a vital sign, as an indicator of your health. And I find that really important because I think we often teach people about their bodies in relation to somebody else's body, and your body matters when it's just your body. Like, I don't even, like, before we even introduce anybody else, and I know this is about contraception, but before we even introduce anybody else, we just have to get familiar here first, before we even take it here. And I think that that's a really great benefit of fertility awareness method, whether it's contraception or whether it's just body literacy, is that it does deepen the relationship with the self. And when you know yourself, we see that people start to ask for more and start to think about what they would accept for themselves. Do I think it's normal to feel pain during my menstrual cycle? Do I think it's normal to, no, there are things we can do about that. So just kind of taking it further into like, what do you want? What's acceptable to you? What are you willing to just stand for? And then what are you like, actually, no, I need more. So, yeah.
Amen. Tracking my cycle totally changed everything about my life. I knew that, we talk about awareness in our life. And when you have awareness of what day you're on, like day 2, day 4, day 18, then you have all the power and choice to figure out how you're going to treat yourself. And so doing that and then adding on levels of spirituality and connected to the universe and Mother Nature, it really is just there for you, and it's been happening forever and all time. I want to wrap up our panel with going off script a little bit, and I haven't been up here, so I don't know if anyone's done this, but I want to take a question from the audience. And we got one right here, and you could direct it to somebody, and then maybe if there's some other ones we can go to. Does that sound good to everybody?
Yeah, I love it.
I like going rogue sometimes. Say your name, and then your question.
Hi, I'm Felisa. Hi. I'm Felisa, and I just wanted to say thank you for doing this. I guess my question is, we're talking a lot about patient awareness, and I was curious to know more about what is being done for physician awareness around these methods, because I know if you go to a doctor and you say, I'm doing the fertility awareness method, most of them look at you like you're crazy, and most of us don't have the privilege to choose and find doctors who are on board with that. So what movements are there that's, working with physicians to keep them informed?
Any of the doctors want to start us out, or Holly, go for it.
I'm going to go for it. I never let a doctor ever stop me, so I'm just going to go.
You're my doctor, for sure.
Well, the nice thing is that we are seeing a change. I'm from the UK, and over the course of 3 years from 2013, they saw quite a significant uptick in interest of women going to their doctors and saying, I want to know about fertility awareness, can you tell me? In response, the NHS, at least in the London area at this point, maybe some other major cities by now, actually offers free fertility awareness classes through the national healthcare system, which I think is fantastic. And that's happened very recently, really, in response to demand. And it's absolutely right that it can be really intimidating to go into your doctor. Do you know what the funny thing I find is that at the end of any article that ever talks about side effects of hormonal birth control, they're always like, don't do anything until you go to your doctor. Do you know what I say? Don't go to your doctor. Just stop taking it if you can. And if you need to get it removed and you feel like your doctor's going to try and persuade you to stay with it for another 6 months, I've heard those stories so many times, then take somebody with you. Take your friend who's like really mouthy and really brave. If you're having really bad side effects, you might not feel very good about advocating for yourself. You might need a friend to go with you. And I don't think there's, you can do that, that's fine. I think, basically you have to think that you're coming from this place. If you're not taking something, like if you're not taking the pill and for a reason that's like a life-saving reason, if you're a healthy person taking the pill, then you can stop and see how you feel. Like, feel empowered to just stop taking it and see how you feel. Because oftentimes the doctor, especially in this country, will act as the salesperson for the method that they put you on. And that can be difficult.
Dr. Vernon, you want to add something to this?
I just think you have to find the right physician, because people manage things differently. I've worked with a lot of very paternalistic physicians. There's different there's different generations, there's different types of physicians, so you just have to find someone who's right for you that you feel comfortable with. And I think, as far as the different methods go, one thing I want to emphasize is, be true with yourself and be honest with yourself. And like me, when I was in residency in medical school, I used an IUD because I could not remember to do something every day, and I didn't want to get pregnant during that time. So don't feel bad if you need something that requires less energy and less effort. It's okay. It doesn't mean that you failed your body. Because if you don't want to get pregnant and doing something every day doesn't work for you, just acknowledge that. And that's the first thing I ask patients, because if you look at every method, you have to look at with perfect use and with typical use. And perfect use for a lot of these methods is going to be 95 to 99%. Typical use can be 70 to 80 something percent. So if you're going to be a typical use person, don't use that method because you're going to have a 25% chance of getting pregnant.
I agree.
You agree? Last thing here.
Yeah, I just wanted to add about bringing a friend with you. That's something that I do, and I think it is a really good way to meet in the middle. I think what we need to do is befriend the limitations. And the limitations of a doctor's visit is it might be short, and they might not have been trained in that, in which case bring your own information. You are your advocate. You are also the champion for your own health. You also have sole responsibility for your own health. No one is going to do that for you, ever. And if you let them, you're just going to let it get away from you. So always have that in mind. And I think it's really great to be working in collaboration and just understanding what the system can do for you, what your doctor can do for you, and what you must always do for yourself. And that's where, and I will attend visits with people, or I'll do one-on-ones with people as their contraception or birth control doula. And a lot of that is just listening to them and reflecting back what it is that I'm hearing that they would really like. And that's unpicking a story, and it's unpicking every experience you've ever had lives in your body, right? So we need to unpick all of that and all of your biases and what you need and what you can expect. And then we can go in and have these conversations. And then we also need to be looking again, education, education, education.
Yeah. Last thing is, I'm inspired by the work of my ancestors. And a ritual that was passed down to me was that women would gather once a month in the time of the new moon, and they would get together and they would be in community with each other, and they would teach each other what they know. And they would talk about their bodies, and they'd talk about their relationship to something higher than themselves. And it's actually something that I share with almost every other indigenous or any other religion in this whole world. It's a shared ritual amongst women. So go find yourself in a women's circle. Go talk to each other about what's going on for yourself. And there's a lot of people here that can help you do it. So thank you everyone for this. Thank you to these amazing people for their work. Go Cycles and Sex team. And thanks.